Welcome back. My name is Teresa and I'm very much alive. I have an awful, garbage, filthy mouth where sometimes, just sometimes, I tend to use the word fuck as a comma. It's invigorating. If you're not into that or weird stuff in general, this is definitely not the place for you. Feel free to exit out the video here. No harm, no foul. But I'll remember our Tom fondly.
Why, hello, my little Anns.
I hope your day has been filled with clipping coupons and rearranging your linen closet. In today's video, I'm going to talk about 3 delicious Ann palettes that recently came out, and we're going to see which Ann reigns supreme. The first palette I want to talk about is from Theresa.is.Dead, and this is the Major Dimensions eyeshadow palette. So this palette retails for a whopping $68. Listen, I'm turning 36 this year, okay? And these neutral palettes are a goddamn siren song for me. So I purchased this in the name of science. With that said, this palette consists of 12 shades, 2 cream shadows, 2 glistening pearl toppers, 4 iridescent metallic eyeshadows, and 4 mattes. Since there is a variety of finishes within this boy, let's break it down by finish. I'm going to start with the cream shadows, which are over here. They're kind of hidden by this like little extra piece of plastic here. These 2 shades are fucking incredible. And honestly, it's probably my favorite thing out of this whole palette. I wish and wish and wish that there were more shades like this in this palette. Cream shadows, for me anyway, in general, are usually kind of difficult to use. I find anyway. And for that very reason, I never really found the appeal of them. In my experience, they're incredibly messy. They usually dry down fast, or they don't dry down fast enough. But if they dry down too fast, then there's like a nice layer of cement on your eyelids, and nobody has time for that. These, however, are amazing. I cannot fucking believe how effortless they are to use and to blend. If you are a beginner, which we all are, okay? These are so beginner friendly, it's not even funny. I'm incredibly impressed how pigmented, how easy they are to blend, and they also serve as wonderful bases for the matte shadows in this palette. Adding the matte shadows on top of the cream, I feel adds a layer of dimension that I wouldn't be able to create with matte on top of matte. There's just something so special about this formula. I am just fucking in love with it. And I'm so sad that there's only 2 shades. Because if this whole palette was creams, bitch, it's coming in the grave with me. Like, I love it. I found that the cream shades not only blend well with a finger, but with a brush as well. And again, it's just a shame that there are 2 of them. And I really do like that there is like this piece of plastic that kind of protects it from the rest of the palette. So you don't have to worry that the shades are gonna get corrupted by the other finishes in this palette. So I kind of like that it has like a little lock. But kind of begs the question, how long are these gonna last? I don't know, but so far so good. Of course, if they dry out incredibly fast, I'll definitely make an update to this video. I'm hoping that these last for a while. Now I'm gonna move on to the mattes in this palette, which is primarily the bottom row. So these 4 shades over here. These are amazing as well. They're pigmented, they blend effortlessly, they have great longevity, they literally do the work for you. I think, again, the creams and the mattes in this palette are just fucking standouts. Yes, there's some kick up, yes, there's some fallout, but overall everything is very, very easy to clean. I'm really incredibly surprised how beginner friendly this palette is. I think when people see the price point and they hear Theresa.is.Dead, they just assume that it's just gonna be something that's like complicated. Again, I cannot stress how good the formula is. It is very easy to use, and you're able to achieve really, really beautiful looks with both of those formulas. It's phenomenal. Now, this is where it goes a little downhill, okay? There are 2 shadows in this palette that are called the glistening pearl toppers, and it's pretty much this shade, which I never know the name. I believe it's a legendary, and I believe this one's divine. So you have this lighter one down here, and you have this darker one up here. Okay, they're weird because they operate very much like the mattes, except they have a slight sparkle. Unfortunately, when applied to the eye, you lose the sparkle, and any sparkle that you do have kind of falls around your face. Maybe for like a nanosecond, you see a glimmer of hope, and then it falls flat. It's really fucking annoying. If anything, I probably see more kick up in this shade than anything. And that's when I find that the sparkles go rogue and attack the other shades in the palette. Honestly, I really don't see the point of having these kind of matte shades with sparkles on them. And I said it once, and I will definitely say it again. For me, there is no added value for mattes with sparkles. Like, I don't understand it. Not to get all Andy Rooney here, but who is this for? What is the purpose of it? Maybe I'm uncultured swine. I probably am. Look at me, bitch. Oink oink. But seriously, what are these? Now, if I just shut the fuck up for a second, I will say that they are great because they operate very, very, very much like the mattes. They just have this stupid fucking sparkle to them. My favorite though out of the two is the shade Divine. There's something about the shade that just makes for a beautiful matte inner corner highlight, as well as one of those shades that just really looks good on like the inner portion of the lid to kind of create like a nice light to dark gradient. It's so fucking good. I would say the biggest downside to this palette is the kind of gross glitter bukkake you get from these shades. And then ultimately they kind of cross-contaminate with the other mattes and turning them into fucking mattes with sparkles. It's a vicious cycle, I tell you. But that aside, these operated very, very beautifully, very much like the mattes, and I love them for that. It's just unfortunate that they have sparkles attached to them. The last set of shades are the iridescent metallics, which is these two as well as I think these two over here. No. Just a no. These shades are fucking painful. The metallics are way too hard pressed in pan, and it feels like fucking sandpaper when I touch them, which is kind of interesting because I've seen a couple reviews on this palette and nobody really has mentioned it, but there is a really weird texture to them that is just so like just off-putting. And it's funny to me because no matter how many times I do like finger swatches, and I cannot for the fucking life of me get them to be as impactful as they are in swatches, or at least like swatched on my finger. It's unfortunate because I thought the glitter bukkake was bad in the matte with sparkle shades. No, these are fucking 20 times worse. When you use a brush or a finger, which I found that a finger operates a little bit better than a brush, it's incredibly messy. And it's the kind of glitter bukkake that just literally sticks down to your base and you're not gonna be able to get it off until you jump into the shower and vigorously scrub the shit out of your face. Like, that's how bad it is. Good luck doing your base first and then using this. You're gonna look like you fucked a disco ball. It is what it is. Now, I had a lot of difficulties picking up this product with a brush. I had to keep going in and layering the product. I did use some NYX glitter glue. I'm not one to use setting spray and their shades, so like I didn't try that, but just with the glitter glue, it didn't really do anything for me. At best, it was okay. Like, I finally got some bit of sparkle to the look, but at what cost? Like, it took way too fucking long and way too much product to look
okay.
I feel like these shadows are the equivalent of busting too early. Like, they look beautiful, but when you actually apply them and use them, you're like, oh, that's what this is? No, I don't want to cuddle. I just want to go home, thank you. I had such high expectations because when I initially saw the swatches of these, they looked like alien sex, like metallic, just fuck me up, like amazing. And then when I did them, it's like, what the fuck is this shit? It's like seeing a Big Mac ad and then getting a Big Mac in person. It's like, this is not the same thing. Like, you're catfishing me here, bitch. However, there's one shade, Exquisite. It is incredibly different from the other metallic toppers. Everything that I just said, I do not experience with that shade. It's just that these three shades up here are a fucking abomination to man. But Exquisite, amazing, fucking perfect. If that formula was the rest of them, then I'm like, I get it, I understand it. So part of me wonders, like, did I get a bad batch? I don't know. Did I? Because it doesn't make any fucking sense to me. I don't know what happened to the formula between the shades. I'm starting to think that Patrick Ta better put these shades on a fucking milk carton and try to find them, because I don't understand what happened between the shades. Because I don't understand how you can come out with something so spectacular like this shade and then serve me this like fucking swill down over here. The other thing too that kind of sucks about them is that some of the colors, like these two in particular, you can't really differentiate on the eye. They kind of look exactly the same. So which makes me think like, well, did you really need those two? Like, maybe you could have used something different there. But anyway, there wasn't really anything spectacular about the shades except for the shade Exquisite. The remainder were duds in this palette. They did have decent longevity, but again, incredibly difficult to clean and just so fucking infuriating. So do you need it? For $68, this is definitely not a unique color story. This is a color story that you have 10 times over in your collection. She's pretty, but she, at the end of the day, is a classic warm tone and palette. However, for $68, I expect every shade to blow me away. Unfortunately, there are 3 shades in this palette that did the complete opposite. The best way I can describe this palette is like winning first place and last place at the same time. It's a shame because the other shades are just so beautifully fucking pigmented. They blend like a dream, they have great longevity. Sure, there's some kick up and there's fallout, but overall, like, this was a joy and a pleasure to play with. It's the iridescent metallics that really just fucked up this palette and brought nothing to the table. Except glitter bukkake and disappointment, which ironically should be the name of my autobiography, but I digress. I still can't get over how the iridescent metallics really differed by shade. But anyway, the other thing that I would say is kind of a negative is that the amount of looks I can create with this palette is very, very minimal. Granted, the looks that I do create are very, very beautiful, but it's kind of the same thing over and over again. For $68, I would hope to get a little bit more than just 2 good looks. I am definitely interested to see what this brand continues to come out with in terms of eyeshadow palettes. If they do include more cream shadows and more matte shadows, the formula for those two are kind of worth it alone, but in that same breath, not worth the $68 price tag. So if you are interested in checking out this palette, I would highly, highly recommend waiting for a Sephora sale, which I kind of feel like it's right around the corner anyway. I would recommend waiting for that to at least kind of save yourself a little bit of money, considering that all the shades are fucking amazing. So anyway, I like this. It's just, I wish there was a little bit more. So the next palette I want to talk about is from Sigma, and this is the Ambiance palette. Ooh. This palette retails for $49 and you get 14 shades and a variety of finishes. This palette is described as the golden hour glow. You know, the time of day where it makes a 3 and 8. Listen, I talk shit about this brand. I know I did. And I believe in my makeup bingo, I was like, Sigma, they're so boring. Ugh. And like, I know I did the whole like, I'm trying to be funny, whatever. But you know what? When I'm wrong, I'll always admit that I'm wrong and issue an apology to the Sigma community. I am sorry that I said this was boring. I mean, it is boring, but the quality though, way better than I fucking expected. There are a variety of finishes in this palette. However, I'm just gonna talk about them as 2 different finishes because I'll be honest, I really didn't see the difference between the shimmers and the metallics kind of versus like glitter. I don't know, like they kind of all just operated very much the same for me. So let's talk about the mattes first. You have 6 mattes in this palette and they are fucking pigmented. I was taken back by how pigmented these shades are. So I would advise to go in with a lighter hand. However, if you do make the mistake of putting a lot on, just know that you are able to blend out. I find the range of colors with these mattes, I think they did a really good job. And I didn't feel like I was making the same look over and over again when using this palette. Unfortunately, I felt that way with the Patrick Ta, but with this one, I felt like I can definitely make a handful of cool looks with this palette. Boring, but cool looks. For example, there are 2 dark brown shades in this palette, kind of serving as like the outer corner shades, I guess, right? And I really do like the fact that there's one shade that's a cool tone brown and one that is a warm tone brown. And I feel like in ways that really kind of sets the tone for the looks, whether I'm using something that's more cool tone or warm tone. There's a lot of versatility in this palette that I like. I found these shades incredibly easy to blend. They had great longevity, and I didn't find any of the shadows to be kind of patchy or muddy when applying or blending. Everything was really just really easy to work with. These were really, really perfect. The only letdown in this palette is the shade Daze, which is like this bone color up here. And it didn't really show up on me as well because perhaps it's probably the color of my fucking skin. But I love making like all matte looks, again, kind of making a gradient from like the lightest to the darkest. And I felt like the shade just, I don't know, wasn't super pigmented for me. I was hoping for it to be a little bit brighter, a little bit more standout. Just didn't happen, which is fine. It is what it is. That aside, there is some light kick up, light fallout, but overall incredibly easy to clean. And I can understand why people love their shadows so much. And again, really sorry by calling this shit boring over and over and over again, but like the formula is really, really good. Now I'm gonna move on to the shimmers and the metallics in this palette. Like I said earlier, I cannot tell the difference between the 2. And I found that they all applied very much the same. No shade was sparklier than the next. With that said, these shades had little to no kick up and fallout. The bukkake was contained and they adhered well to a brush. I used some NYX glitter glue and didn't experience any sort of fucking weirdness, no patchiness, no texture issues. Everything was perfect. When applied with a brush, they are incredibly pigmented, but something about using your finger makes the shades come alive. They're a little bit more punchier. So just something to know if you are going with the brush, they're still very pretty, but they're a little bit more muted compared to using your finger. The longevity of these shades are fucking great. I didn't experience any cracking or fading or flaking. Everything stayed into place well after like 12 hours. The formula for the mattes and the metallics and shimmers, they all operated very much the same. Incredible longevity. The only negative I do have with kind of the shimmers and metallics is that some of them kind of look a little bit the same. For me, I love to create gradients. It's just something that I like to do just to kind of show a little bit dimension in the eyeshadows. And for me, some of the shades just kind of bordered very, very similar. So I couldn't tell the difference between the shades. So then I started thinking, well, you know, I wonder like, could they have pared down some of the shimmers and maybe replace them with other tones? Kind of very similar to the Patrick Ta in that way. But overall, again, really enjoyed the formula of it. Honestly, I am just pleasantly surprised how much I enjoyed playing with this palette. And I know I've been giving this brand a lot of shit, but I was wrong. I think for the price point of this palette, the amount of looks you can create, as well as getting this nice Sigma brush, which by the way, the Sigma brush is a dual-ended brush, which I did use because I do like Sigma brushes. They're really nice. And I think what sweetens the pot for this palette is that you do get a really nice quality brush. Oftentimes when brushes are included in palettes, they're not really that good, but this one is actually pretty fucking fantastic. On one side you have the E38, and on the other side you have the E54. This brush is really good, and I actually found myself utilizing it, which says a lot. I usually toss the brush away in palettes. This one I was like, oh no, I want to use it. And then it actually made me go, you know what? I kind of want to go on the Sigma site and go purchase some of their brushes because I forgot how much I enjoy their brushes. With that said, I really enjoyed this palette so much, and I'm incredibly happy that I pulled the trigger on it. I highly recommend checking this out if you're looking for like a warm tone, boring upgrade. This is a really great palette to play with. Also, the beauty about Sigma is that I feel like a lot of people have codes, so you don't actually have to pay full price for this. If you use somebody's code, you can definitely get it for at least 10% cheaper, which is always a fucking plus in my book. Anyway, it's a fucking win. This was really awesome, and I really like it. I know. Who am I? I don't know. Last but certainly not least, let's talk about the brunette palette from Melt Cosmetics. Full transparency, this was sent to me. The other two palettes I did purchase. This one was sent to me courtesy of Camera Ready Cosmetics. So thank you so much. If you're ever interested in wanting to shop at Camera Ready Cosmetics, I do have a coupon code. Use the code garbage. I do not make any money off this code. This is purely just for you to use and, you know, save yourself a little bit of money, because what's not better than saving yourself a little bit of money? Anyway, so this 8-shade palette retails for a whopping $48, and it's described as a unique blend of soft and spice neutral hues. If you are new to this channel, I have a very love-hate relationship with Melt Cosmetics, as well as Natasha Denona, but whatever. Anyway, I'm always rooting for them, but they tend to have a lot of inconsistencies between each new release. And it's a shame because they make such beautiful fucking color stories. The last palette they released, which I believe was the Mary Jane palette, I wanted to love that palette so much because it was a cool tone dream. The shimmer formula was chunky garbage and not like me, okay? Like, it just wasn't cute. That said, there are two formulas within this palette. You have mattes and then you have like the metallic shimmers. So let's talk about the mattes first. There are 5 mattes within this palette, and you know what? These are fucking amazing. They're fucking awesome. When Melt is good, they're fucking good. And when they're bad, they're fucking bad. But these are fucking good. They're pigmented, they blend effortlessly. I didn't experience any patchiness or difficulty when using these shades. They all blend together like a dream. And again, I think out of all the palettes, this is the one palette that I was able to really create my like all matte look from like the lightest to the darkest shade. And it's just, it's so fucking beautiful because all of the shades just really blend very well together. They all stand out on their own and nothing gets lost in the mix. And I love that about this palette. When I first used this palette, I actually was heading to the doctor's office and it was a heat wave. So I was like, you know what? I want to be a neutral Nelly. I don't want to scare the shit out of the doctor. Let's just like make it all like an all matte look. It was so fucking pretty and just beautiful, and people were complimenting me on the look because we're all wearing masks, so all you can fucking see is my eyes. Everyone was like, oh, your eyeshadow's so pretty. I'm like, I know, thank you. Such a fucking bitch. But no, I just loved how easy it was to use, and even with the heat and just the sweating and just the gross anxiety that is the doctor's office, this eyeshadow stayed in place. The longevity of it is fucking phenomenal. I think out of all the palettes, the longevity of this one I think was the best. It was the kind of longevity where you can wear this eyeshadow palette at 7 o'clock in the morning and at 7 o'clock at night it's still gonna look good. It was fabulous. With that said, there is some kick up and pan, but not like the usual Melt nonsense. So that's another selling point. Seriously, I really don't understand how they don't get their formula to stay the same. These mattes in this palette are some of the best mattes that I've ever tried from Melt. They're fucking solid. And I can only hope that they continue to use this formula, but listen, I'm not gonna hold my breath. Now, the 3 remaining shades in the palette are these 3 metallic shades over here. Usually I hate Melt Shimmer metallic formula. I think it's fucking overrated and gross and never really works for me. I have experienced the horror science project that is the Smoke Sessions palette, and I have been forever scarred by it. I still have nightmares. Needless to say, I'm used to their puffy shadows that are beyond messy and difficult to use. This formula, however, is fan-fucking-tastic. It's like night and day. Again, I don't know where the fuck this has been, but I don't know why this formula can't be in the other melt palettes. I just don't understand why. And if they don't do more metallic shimmer shades in this formula, it's a fucking travesty because they just work so beautifully. Oh my God. The metallic shades barely had any kick up or fallout. If there was fallout, it was just like a speck. Everything was just locked into place. I did use some glitter glue with these shadows, and the shadow adhered to the brush so well. Like I didn't have to go in with a finger or anything like that. And I also love that each one of the metallic shades stand on their own. Much like the mattes, if you do use them as a gradient, you can tell the difference between the colors. Everything stands on its own. It's so beautiful. Much like the mattes, they had terrific longevity. I didn't experience any cracking or fading or flaking or anything throughout the course of the day. And even at the end of the day, these fuckers were vibrant. They were incredibly vibrant. Like I cannot stress enough how just fucking great these were. Like they were amazing. For once, I feel like Melt got it right. And this is definitely coming into the fucking casket with me. Especially for the shade Bourbon. It's a beautiful bronze shade, and if you have blue eyes like myself, it's like a fucking standout. It just makes your eyes pop even more. I really love this palette. All the shades work together so well that again, kind of like begs the question, why can't it always be like this, baby? Like, why can't it always be like this? For an 8-pan eyeshadow palette, you get a nice variety of looks and the colors just work so fucking beautifully together. I do want to point out one thing though, and I didn't really notice this until one of my patrons mentioned it to me, but I was having a Patreon live stream and someone asked like, oh, well, what about the Rust palette in comparison to this? So I kind of want to note that there is some overlap between the two palettes, but they also do have their differences. So if you do get drunk one day and decide to purchase both of them, it's not all lost. However, if you're picking between the two, I would say go with the color story that just tickles your pickle the most. I think for me, I really love that Rust palette because I love that yellow, but I think I would actually go with this palette. I don't know, there's just something about the Bourbon shade for me is just so like fucking just everything that I'm drawn to this one. Anyway, let me know down below which basic bitch palette rules the land. I think for me, I think I really like the fucking Melt Cosmetics one the most, and then possibly followed by the Sigma. Fuck, see, this is the thing that's like not fair because I really liked all three of the palettes. It's just the Patrick Ta one probably has the most cons out of all the palettes, but that was still, again, fucking beautiful formula. Ugh, all right, anyway, god damn it. They're all coming with me. I can't choose. God damn it. Okay, anyway, let me know down below if you have any of these palettes and choose for me because obviously I can't because I'm a Libra and I just want everybody to love me. On that note, I want to say thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it as always. Feel free to like, comment, hit that subscribe button. It's free. And hit that bell icon for notification of all my future posts. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, to all my beautiful, wonderful patron bubbies. Thank you so much for keeping this delicious, disgusting, filthy, very basic, very Anne, but very basic garbage boat afloat. I couldn't do without you. I love your adorable little delicious faces. I can't wait to clip coupons with you and go to Bath & Body Works to go fill up on some candles. If you want to know what is currently on my face, along with where to get my palette, my merch, my bloopity blop blop, oh, my podcast too, which will be coming back soon, everything will be listed in the description box below. And I'll see you little Anns later. Stay boring. Bye.